Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9, Hot 98.5, 98.7, and all the viewers and listeners on Party Grenada and Go to FET Facebook pages. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Point. This morning I have as my virtual guests are officials of the National Insurance Scheme, the NIS. I have joining me is the Director, Dorsett Cromwell, Deputy Director, Cindian St. Bernard, Compliance Manager, Franca Bell, and the Public Relations Officer, Mrs. Lisa Douglas. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. It's a real pleasure being here.
Happy to have you. So we have lots of information to cover this morning, lots of things that I know a lot of people will be interested in. So let's first start with one of the exciting things or the new things that the NIS will be introducing soon, the new web portal that would make way for paperless submission of information, let's put it that way. Tell us about the new web portal that will make it easier for patients or customers of the NIS, doctors, and employers.
Well, good morning to you and good morning to the listening public. Essentially, what we're trying to do with this activity is to make the submission of all benefit claims paperless. So essentially in the process, there would be no paper. So you would go to the doctor, and once you finish with the doctor, he would go onto his portal and he would complete whatever he has to complete. Put in your NIS number, put in the period of your sick leave, and probably the nature of your illness. Right? He would then submit that, and that would come to you, either on some form of device. It could be a laptop, it could be a phone, cell phone, etc. Once you would have reviewed it and you're satisfied that what the doctor submit is accurate, then on your device, tablet, phone, etc., you would then submit it. It will go straight to your employer. Your employer also would review it, make sure that what you submitted is accurate, and then he would send it on to the NIS. And when it comes to the NIS, we would review, of course, make sure all the particulars are accurate, and then pay, right? And when you pay, the money goes straight to the bank. So in the entire process, there is no paper, right? There is no paper at all. And also along the way, if there is an issue, you can revert the claim. So if at the NIS you recognize there is a problem, we can send it back electronically to the employer. The employer could send it back electronically to the claimant, and the claimant could send it back electronically to the doctor. So there is interaction if there is a problem along the way. So that is essentially the process that we have in place. We have already engaged a consultant, and they have commenced working. And additionally, and we're hoping to have it sometime around August, in that vicinity, August, September, we're hoping to have some pilot to launch to see how it works and maybe make tweaks here and there.
Has this been a request from members of the public for some time? What made you decide that this is the opportune time to get this web portal up and running?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, essentially, in-house, we are always trying to, do better, right? Revamp processes, make sure processes are faster, smoother. And the public on a whole is always asking for services that are easier to use, faster. People always, although we pay 95% of our claims within one working day, people are still asking that we pay claims, faster. And also we think that we have a responsibility to treat with issues relating to the use of paper and the carbon footprint. So that is behind what we are trying to do here, to make our own contribution to the carbon footprint and make sure that we are not utilizing lots of paper for the impact that it has on the environment, and facilitate customers with faster, easier services.
All right. Let's move on now. We'll get back to it, of course, but let's move on to other things. We have a lot to cover this morning, so I want to get to as many of them as I can during the time. In terms of the mortgage loan programs at the NIS, just this morning I was listening to Let's Talk NIS and I heard about the mortgage loan program. So give us some more information about what this would mean for customers.
The NIS has a loan program, so it's not just home mortgage loan. Of course, if you want to buy a piece of land, or you want to buy a house, or you want to construct your dream home, you can contact us and, of course, get a mortgage once you qualify. In addition to that, we also refinance. We also consolidate existing loans. In addition, we have consumer loans. Loans if you need to buy a vehicle, you have some medical loans that you need to get. If you want to study or you need to learn a new skill, we also have loans for those purposes. If you want to buy furniture and equipment, you can get a loan from the NIS. So what we are doing is to encourage everyone to call us, email us, or you can visit us, find out how much you can qualify for before you make any decisions, and we will guide you through the entire process.
Is this a feature that a lot of people have been taking advantage of?
Well, actually, our consumer loans are new products. Most of them are new products. And we've had a viable home mortgage loan program for quite a number of years. But this year we decided to add some new products to it and relaunch it. We also have really great interest rates, very competitive, very low. So hence the reason we decided, you know what, this is a good time to let persons know that you can own your little piece of the Spice Island with a loan from the NIS.
All right, now let's go on to another topic. This one deals with compliance. I recall it was last year that we really started to see and hear about the issue of non-compliance among employers as in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and people who were seeking assistance from the NIS and support from the NIS. What update can you give us in relation to compliance and getting employers to comply with the rules and regulations of the NIS?
Okay, first of all, we want to let employers know. And when we speak of employers, we're not just talking about large established businesses. We're talking about anybody who hires someone and you pay that person for the work they do. You are an employer. And it is your responsibility to register with the NIS as the employer. So we're not just talking about registering your business. Let's suppose you have a domestic worker at home and that person is your employee. It means you are an employer and you are required to register with the NIS. So employers are required to register, first of all. Once you're registered, the law says within 4 days of employee starting work, that employee is required to register with the NIS. You also, within 7 days of hiring your first employee as the employer, you are supposed to register, make sure that employee is registered with the NIS. Before paying the employee, you are required to deduct the NIS contributions from the employee's salary. So just a reminder of the contribution rate, it's 11%. From the employee's salary, the employer would take 5%. And from the employer, he or she would add 6%, giving you the total of 11%. And at the end of every month, the employer is required to make that contribution payment to the NIS. And you can do so electronically through your respective financial institution. And in addition to making the payments, the employer is also required to submit the salary information of that employee. So that's what you need to do as an employer to be NIS compliant. Register your employees, deduct the contributions, make the payments, submit all the information. Now, when it comes to the employees, it's your responsibility to make sure you are registered, You have your NIS number, you have your NIS card. And thereafter, employees should check with the NIS. So you can send us an email or call, visit, contact us on our social media platforms, but find out whether or not your employer is actually submitting your information. If it's not being submitted, then you contact us, and that's where our compliance work would come in. So that takes us to the issue of our compliance officers. In fact, the compliance department at the NIS is the largest department in the office, because we take this issue of compliance not lightly, but very seriously. Because as you can appreciate, any employee who is left without contributions being paid for them means it compromises their benefits, and we don't want that to happen. So I would turn over to Ms. Bell, who is the compliance manager, and she would tell you a bit about our compliance officers and their responsibility.
Sure.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Bell.
So I'm here to speak about the compliance officers. Now, at present, we have 3 compliance officers. Their responsibility is to go into the field, visit employers. They conduct audits, as well as they visit construction sites and small entities. The purpose of those visits is to make sure that what the employer submits is what they should submit. So it's basically comparing what they submit to what we already have here. We also, one of the next reason for the visit is to make sure that all employers within Grenada are registered and submitting, because we have a lot of employers who are not registered and not submitting, whereas we also have employers who are registered and just not submitting. So we visit those employers to make sure that they are doing the right stuff.
How difficult has it been to get employers and employees to cooperate and be compliant?
Well, it could be very difficult because there are some industries, I will speak especially on the construction industry, where some of the employees, they work together with the employer not to pay the NIS. So you go to those sites, the employer is not paying, and the employees are siding with the employer on the decision to not pay.
And how do you deal with a situation like that?
Well, most of the time we will have to resort to go into to court with the employer to get them to register.
And has it been a lot of cases like that, a lot of instances, even outside of the construction industry?
Yes, we have it also with the domestic employees, persons working at as a maid or in somebody's home. That has been a challenge for us also.
And in terms of self-employment, or people who are self-employed, what has that level of compliance been like?
Compliance in the self-employed sector is not as high as it can and should be. So one of the things too that we are encouraging and letting self-employed persons know, it doesn't matter the nature of your employment, your self-employment rather. The benefits that are offered by the NIS, they all are available to self-employed persons. So whether you're driving your bus, whether you're selling your drinks in your little shop or on the side of the road, you see a lot of persons, especially in the advent of COVID, who have turned to self-employment, some to farming, some all different sorts of areas, but you're self-employed. You're making your guava cheese and your tambran ball at home. You're fishing or you're a fish vendor. It doesn't matter. You are required to register. You contribute to the same 11% because you're entitled to all the benefits, including employment injury. So that's a sector too. We're also trying to form strategic linkages with different organizations to help in that regard.
The other compliance issues, I understand that the NIS is also considering, for lack of, or the phrase that I like to use, naming and shaming companies, employers who are not compliant with the rules of the NIS. Tell us about that initiative.
Okay. So we have a number of employers who are consistently non-compliant, right? The compliance department is basically makes up two parts: is the compliance officers who visit the field, and then we also have the compliance clerk on the inside. Now, the compliance clerk, on a daily basis, they would call employers, write emails and letters to employers, and we also have employers who visit the office in order to bring them to some form of compliance, right? However, we have a number of employers who are consistently non-compliant. Over the years, some of the employers we will bring them up to a point where they are compliant, and then they just go back into becoming non-compliant. And then there are employers who are just consistently non-compliant in that we have court matters against them. We have claims in the court against them. Some employers have 3-4 matters we have 3-4 matters in the court against some employers, and there's no changing. We have meetings with employers. We do something we call a proposal agreement with employers so that they can pay by installment to try to liquidate the amount outstanding. But some employers, there's no breakthrough.
So the plan is therefore
to put their name in the newspaper.
So tell us. Go ahead. Tell us how that would work, exactly what you'd put in the newspaper, the information that you'd put, and how you think the employers would receive that, and do you think it would really make them or encourage them to be compliant?
I think, first of all, you have to understand the responsibility of the employer and also the impact that when you do not submit, the impact it has on an individual, right? When an employer does not submit the information, he does not pay the contribution, it affects people. It means people do not get a pension for life, right? And for most people in societies like our small societies, the NIS pension is what people depend on. Some people say the pension is small. It may be small, but that is what most people depend on, whether it is in Grenada, it is in St. Vincent, etc. Now, what we are doing in Grenada is not unique to the Caribbean. Some of the other social security systems in the region have done it. So the likes of St. Vincent have been putting people, Trinidad have been putting the names of delinquent employers in the newspaper because you have a responsibility. You have a statutory responsibility to pay people, deduct it and pay. And there are employers who are deducting it and they're not paying it. They're using it for their own personal whatever. So you have a responsibility. You are deducting my money and you're not paying it, right? And therefore, we are saying we cannot afford to do this any longer. You cannot afford to be deducting people's money every month, not paying it, using it for your own purposes, and you are affecting the individual in a fundamental way. Right? The person cannot get a benefit. They may not be able to get a short-term benefit or a long-term benefit, and in the end, they may not get a contribution. And in industries like, for instance, the construction, what happens in those cases is because construction is such a transient industry, right? It may happen that, okay, you are working with this employer, right? And by the time the contract finishes, he doesn't pay for you, right? You go about your business. And in a lot of cases, they do not know the people, they do not even know the employee's name. So on the side, they call it Rasta, they call it Bongo, they call it whatever, right? So if you lose significant periods of contribution that you would not get back. And when you get to us, when you get to the NIS at age 60, right, you have 450 contribution, you have 300 contribution, but you have actually worked to be entitled to a pension. So whereas you would have gotten a pension for the rest of your life, you only get a lump sum payment that will probably last you 5-6 months, and that is not right. Right? It is not right. So we are saying, listen, you have to stop this practice. Otherwise, we are going to put your name in the newspaper so that the general public knows, your employees also know that you are not paying for them. Because in a lot of cases, the employees do not know until they come for a benefit. Some employees think the employer is paying, and they do not know until you come for a benefit. So that is what essentially we are trying to do here. Additionally to it, is important for the state of the fund, right? The National Insurance Fund, you would remember in 2019, we had the public consultation, educating people on the state of the National Insurance Fund. And the National Insurance Fund is not in a great state. We say it unapologetically, right? Because for a social security fund to be in good state, you have to keep making adjustments to the parameters of the fund. You have to increase the contribution rate periodically. You have to increase the retirement age, right? Like all other social security systems in the region. So because we in Grenada have taken so long to do these things, the fund is not in a great state. And therefore, we cannot afford to have money sitting outside it that people are supposed to be paying and not paying. And then they come in people have to come for a benefit. When somebody works on a construction site, they work on the road for a long period of time. When they get to 60, they should get what they deserve. Right? They should get what they deserve. And an employer should not take it back, hold it, buy a van, buy a big car, buy whatever, build his big house, and a small man on the street cannot get his pension. It is just not fair. It's fundamentally wrong. So this is the position after many years that we have taken. We tried the amnesty a couple of years ago, where we offer employers a period and give them big waivers and penalty, and it did not even work. Right? For most of them, they took the amnesty, they signed the document, and they did not meet their obligation. So you have too many employers who are taking the national insurance scheme as a joke, and we are saying the joke is over.
So just to clarify, it's not just if I don't pay contributions this month. It has to be a consistent non-compliance. And will there be something like a warning before they are named and shamed, or no time for warning?
Yes. We will walk through a process. We will walk through a detailed process and make sure that the employer has a fair chance to make good before we put your name in the newspaper. And if you miss one month payment, your name is not going to appear, right? Because it may just be a minor issue, some administrative issue that happens. Somebody who has to sign a check, they're not in the country, whatever the case is. It will not be like that. As the compliance manager said, it will be for employers who are chronic, right, in their non-compliance. And they will have an opportunity to make good. Now, all know, too, this is also an opportunity, right? When we have this discussion, when we do the post on the non-compliance, this is an opportunity for the employers who are on Facebook, for the employers who are listening, to call the office, ask for a statement, make sure your contribution is up to date, and you don't need to make sure, because if you have not been paying, you know you have not been paid, right? So you need to come to the office, get a statement, see how much you owe, and pay the money that you took out from people's salary. And if you did not take it out, you're wrong, because you have a statutory responsibility to take it out.
So then that brings me back to a question I asked earlier in relation to the employers who are non-compliant, at least those who came to light during the COVID-19 pandemic. What efforts have been made to get them to comply? Have they complied, or do we still have that issue on a major scale, a large scale of non-compliance?
Well, yeah, during the COVID period, the government made it a requirement for the employers, especially self-employed persons, small businesses who benefited from the support program, to be registered with the NI. But registration is only one issue. Some people register and they never pay. Right? They never pay. And that's why we have said fundamentally that where we are trying to seek compliance, right? Whether with the support of government or whether with the support of other private entities, etc., registration is not sufficient, right? You have to insist that the employer is compliant. So from that period, yes, we have had improvement. So we had employers before who were not paying and started paying now. But you also have some of those who benefited from the government program, right? Got the support, promised to pay, and they're not paying. So you have that also. And hopefully, some of the measures that we have in place, including the newspaper, would address that. Right? We are also seeking to make some changes to the regulation, to strengthen the regulation so that we can also use that to increase compliance.
Mr. Bernard, let me bring you in here. Is there anything you'd like to add, especially with this, that's the name I'm giving it, forgive me, name and shame plan that the NIS has in terms of encouraging employers to be compliant?
Good morning, Blossom. Good morning to your listeners. I mean, I think we would like this to be more of a deterrent. I don't think it is the intention of national insurance to name and shame persons.
Understood.
So it is supposed to encourage persons to make your contributions current, so that we do not have to resort to those measures. But we are saying that if you don't, we would have no choice but to go ahead and do it. Because you see, on a daily basis, there are persons who would apply for benefits and they just cannot qualify for the benefit because their employer just would not have paid. And you would go to the employer, request that they pay up. The person may apply for age benefit. Based on the number of contributions they have, they can only qualify for a grant, which is a one-off payment rather than getting a pension for life. Now, in a case like that, every day it burns me that I see persons who would have worked all of their lives and thinking that their contributions were being paid, only to find out when you actually apply for your pension, you cannot get it because your employer just did not pay. So this just cannot continue. I mean, we have tried all other measures before, none of which have worked. So we cannot keep doing the same thing and expecting to get different results. Hence the reason we are trying different ways to see how we can get employers to pay.
So far, have you had feedback from specifically the non-compliant employers, letting them know this is your next course of action? What has the response been like? And even from employees as well who have, felt the brunt of their employers not paying their contributions. Have you gotten feedback?
I think what we have been seeing is that more employers are requesting statements. So since we would have launched the initiative or started sensitizing persons about it, you would have seen more employers requesting to know what their contribution status is. So hopefully, if this continues, we expect to see that once they get their statement and they realize that they're owing, that payments, they would actually start making payments. So it's actually, we are already getting a desired result just from starting to publicizing the matter.
Okay, all right. Well, things are looking good. Let's take a break, ladies and gentlemen, and then we'll be right back. We are speaking with officials of the National Insurance Scheme. To the point, we'll be right back.
Montreal, it's time to line virtually one more time. Gemma Rayburn Baines here for Spice Island Cultural Festival, a celebration of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. This summer's festival is a celebration of life with food, fashion, music, and culture. Join us online Saturday, July 10th, 3 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube at Spice Island Cultural Festival. Info, spiceislandculturalday.com.
Do you hear what I hear? Listen to the ocean, and you will hear a cry for help. The ocean is hurting, and we are the source of the hurt. But we can stop and start to heal our ocean by preventing pollution from getting into our waterways. It can start with you. Join an active organization, or better yet, make a personal commitment. Commit not for just one day in the year, but for the rest of your life. Let's dispose of our plastic and other waste responsibly, and let's start building resilience. Let the healing begin.
This message is brought to you by the OECS Commission with funding from the Government of Norway. REMLIT, tackling ocean pollution from tooth to sooth.
There's no better way to start your day than with me on Good Morning Grenada. Good Morning Grenada is your one-stop shop. We have information, education, entertainment, your bi-weekly traffic cam, and we link up with the sister isles of Carriacou and PT Martinique. Join me every 6:35 on weekdays for Good Morning Grenada. It's your daily dose of all things Grenadian, mixed with just a little bit of crazy. Good morning, good morning. I said just a little bit of crazy. I tell all of the things that take me. Good Morning Grenada, 6:35 a.m. on weekdays, available on all GBN platforms. Start your morning off right. Welcome back to the Point. We're speaking with officials of the National Insurance Scheme. We have the Director, Mr. Dorsett Cromwell, the Deputy Director, Cindian St. Bernard, Compliance Manager, Franca Bell, and the Public Relations Officer, Lisa Douglas. Before we go to viewers and listeners, Mrs. Douglas, in terms of those people who are self-employed, you mentioned earlier that doesn't matter what size of business you have, that you still need to make your contributions to the NIS. So even if I sell what could sell by, even if I sell in mango stew?
Yes, you're included. Once you're conducting any business activity, you're receiving income based on your business activity. You're self-employed. You're not working with someone. You're self-employed. And you need to register, because guess what? You're entitled to all the benefits. So if you get sick, you're covered. Maternity, you're covered. Employment injury, you're covered. Medical expenses under employment injury, you're covered. And of course, you have to secure your rainy day and you have to secure your retirement. So you also need to make sure that you are covered for an age benefit when you reach your golden years. So you're not left out. You're not excluded.
The only thing is I would have to pay the entire 11% by myself. It's not split.
You pay the entire 11% because you get all the benefits.
All right.
And speaking of 11%, I want to remind employees, again, it's important to request your contribution statement. Your contribution statement can be sent to you via email, so you do not necessarily need to visit us to get it. So you could call us. We're on all the social media platforms. Send us a message. We also have a live chat feature on our website. So on your handheld devices, your cell phone, your tablet, etc., you go on to nisgrenada.org. At the bottom right-hand corner, you would see a chat feature there, and you could chat with us instantly. You could make your request. You could, if you have a complaint, you could submit it right there. If you need to follow up on a benefit or any information that you need, you can contact us on our live chat feature. It's very instant.
All right. This is a point in the program where we would invite our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns. This is your chance to do so. The landline number is 435-2041. The phone's been ringing since the program started, actually. The WhatsApp number, it's also 435-2041. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. And you can continue to post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Just a reminder that please be respectful with your comments and your questions. Let's go to the landline. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hello?
Morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
I have a few questions for these people namely. I don't know who's on the board. Are you there?
Yes, we are.
I want to find out, could you tell us how much money government is owing to NIS by way of loans? That is one. Two, tell us if government paying the monthly contribution to workers paying the contribution to the workers' contribution every month. 3, why is it that the NIS, the monthly payment for people, the NIS cannot go up, and it is so long? People deserve a raise. It cannot go up. How long people get a raise? That is 3. How much money is used to pay crooked deals as a result of those loans government take? Tell us. Those crooked deals that the money that government is taking to pay, tell us. That is what we want to know.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Cromwell?
Okay, sir. Let me thank the caller for the questions, which I think are important, and we would answer it. Let me say first and foremost that government is an investor like any other investor, all right? And we invest in government paper and government instrument similar to every social security scheme, any part of the world. In fact, in the US social security system only invests in government papers. That's all they do. They invest in nothing else, right? And anybody can check it. And throughout the region, every country invests in government instruments, right? And a social security system cannot be strong in a weak economy, right? So it is fundamental that to some extent you help the country as best you could. Good? Now, in terms of Grenada, we in Grenada, the social security system in Grenada, has the lowest in the region, lowest investment in government instrument than most other social security systems. So I believe Cindian can correct me, but it should be in the vicinity of only 21%. So we invest 21%, I believe, of our investment portfolio in government paper, and that is the lowest in the region. And all of the government's instruments that we invest in are up to date. So they pay monthly and on time. So government is not owing the national insurance scheme any money relative to its investment. You see, sometimes as a people, when we hold on to something from 40 years ago, we want to hold on to it forever. If I made a mistake 20 years ago, we want to say Dorsett Cromwell is making the same mistake today, right? This government, and in recent governments have not been owing the national insurance scheme any money on the investment. All of our investment with government are up to date. And most are done through the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. So they're not paying us. They pay the exchange and we get the money from the exchange, most of it. Additionally, government is probably the most compliant employer in terms of NIS contribution, right? The most compliant employer in the country. And we say that, without correction. Government pays its contribution for its employee in the vicinity of about $2 million, $2+ million every month religiously, up to date. So let's forget what happened 50 years ago and deal with the reality of today. Right? That is the reality. If governments in the past were non-compliant, right? They're not non-compliant now. And we have been saying that since 2019, when we were discussing parametric reform. The government of Grenada is not non-compliant. The government of Grenada is probably the most compliant employer in the country. Let's put that down as a fact and move on. That's the objective reality. And the caller talk about deserving a raise on the pension. We understand that and we appreciate that, right? But the objective reality of the fact is, because NIS Grenada, unlike some of the other social security schemes in the region, have not made changes to the system in a timely manner, the National Insurance Scheme of Grenada cannot afford a raise in the pension. So in previous years, previous actuaries have recommended increase in the pension, and the pensions were increased in previous years to take care of inflation, right? But whereas St. Lucia, for instance, has increased their retirement age since about 2013 around there, and the retirement age in St. Lucia is 65. All the other countries, Dominica, St. Vincent, all the other countries are increasing their retirement age. It is still 60 in Grenada, right? So whereas the other countries have responded well and made the parametric changes that they need to make, we have not done so in Grenada, and therefore we have affected in a way the sustainability of the National Insurance Fund. And therefore, when the actuaries do the assessment, they have calculated that the National Insurance Scheme of Grenada cannot afford to increase the pension to mitigate inflation. It is unfortunate, but it is the reality of the situation. Right? So hopefully, it is not something that necessarily will continue in the future, but if we do what we're supposed to do, increase the retirement age when we have to increase it, increase the contribution rate when we have to increase it, because the 2% increase that took place in 2020, that is not the end of that. If you go through all of the other social security schemes, they are increasing the in Antigua, for instance, Antigua contribution rate increased from to 13.5% in 2020. It increased to 14% in 2021, 14.5% it would increase in 2022, 15% in 2023, 15.5% in 2024, and 16% in 2025. So the situation in Grenada is not unique to Grenada. It is a situation that exists in all social security systems. You just have to continue making parametric change to keep the system sustainable. And the sooner you do it, the earlier you do it, the less you have to do, and the less painful it is, right? So that is the answer essentially on the increasing of the rate. It is a desirable activity. You want to increase it, but the state of the fund does not allow us to increase it.
All right, let's go to a YouTube question. Somebody on YouTube is asking, what is the NIS doing to collect benefits on behalf of people working outside of Grenada, for example, farm workers and cruise line workers?
Okay, so those persons have the opportunity to register as a self-employed person and get the same benefits. So we're encouraging them to contact us. Let us work with you. Let us look at your income. Sometimes self-employed persons have the tendency to say, well, I don't know how much to pay. I don't make the same amount all the time. That's not a problem. Talk to us. We would walk through it with you, and we would come up with a desired amount based on your income, your expenses. So we would hold your hand if you want to call it that. But they're self-employed, so they should contact us so that they could contribute as such.
Facebook, somebody's saying, I know of people who have made maximum contributions, then why do they still have to pay NIS?
Okay, that's a myth that I would like to provide some clarity on. Now, the minimum requirement to receive an age pension is 500 contribution weeks. And let me explain how contributions are counted very quickly. Now, although for most persons your payments are made monthly, when it reaches to the NIS, it is broken up into weeks based on the number of Mondays in the month. So a contribution week is actually any period where an employee or a self-employed person worked for at least one day and received income. It's counted as a contribution week. So every month you get 4 or 5 contribution weeks added to your account. So correspondingly, at the end of the year, if you work every month, you accumulate 52 contribution weeks. So an age pension, you require minimum 500 weeks. Some people take the minimum to mean that's the requirement. That's all you need. So they have a tendency of saying, well, I make my contribution, meaning I reach 500, so I need to stop paying. That's not true, because after you reach that first 500 weeks, that's where your pension is paid at the minimum pension rate of 30%. Thereafter, for every set of 50 contribution weeks, you add to that 500. So it means after that first 10 years, for every additional complete year you work, 1% is added onto your pension rate. So it means the more contribution weeks you accumulate, the higher the rate of your pension. So someone who stops paying and says, well, I make my contribution, are actually limiting themselves to a lower pension rate, whereas they could have gotten a higher rate. The rate goes up to a maximum of 60%.
WhatsApp. I know I was missing a platform. All right. Somebody on WhatsApp is asking, is there any measure that NIS can take against perpetrators who deny individuals of their lifetime contributions? Example, file litigation against them or use their valuables as collateral, where they will have to compensate the victims for life?
Well, of course, that's one of the reasons we're starting that activity from August 1st. So we have, as the compliance manager mentioned before, we have quite a number of measures that we take. We have actually a process that we go through in terms of working with non-compliant employers. We call you, we speak to you, we send you emails, we send you letters, and it only goes into the legal stage when that employer continues to refuse to do right by their employees. So it's not a case where we just wake up in the morning and we take legal action. So we do have a number of procedures we go through, including legal, and of course we'll be doing the newspaper from August 1st. And if that doesn't work, of course there are other measures that we would look into. If you look at the other social security institutions in the region, some of them garnish persons' wages and earnings and etc. So we would continue to look for ways, because we know that a person who is denied a benefit, that just cannot happen. So we would continue to look for ways to curb that situation.
All right, let's go back to the phone line. Good morning, caller.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
With reference to the question I asked, I want to tell the gentleman, listen to me very carefully. I am living in Grenada. I am not living in Dominica or St. Lucia. So don't come and make no reference to me with the NIS with Dominica and St. Lucia. I call and make reference to Grenada. Well, then if you want to make reference to Dominica and St. Lucia, make reference to the gas prices too.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not living in Dominica. I'll talk about my country. Come and tell me something about my country.
All right. Thank you, caller. You want to respond, Mr. Cromwell, or we can move on?
Well, we reference the other countries because the fundamental issues are the same, right? All of the social security system, all defined benefit social security system face the same issue, because you have increase in life expectancy, you have changes in the population structure, you have migration because people leave these small countries and go to live in Europe and North America. So all of these countries face the same fundamental issue. So what is happening in Grenada is similar to what is happening in St. Vincent, Dominica, etc., etc. And that is why you would see all social security systems, any part of the world, once they are defined benefit social security program, would experience the same set of problems, and they would try to remedy it with the same set of solutions. So by and large, you see people increase their contribution rate, increase their retirement age, they may increase the ceiling, etc. So it is important to have context, and it is important to understand that we are not an island by ourselves. The issues that we face are not unique to Grenada, and Grenada would not have a solution that nobody else has. We're not reinventing the wheel. The issues are the same, and we don't arrive at a solution for ourselves. We get a solution from the technical expert, the actuary, who we are required by law to bring in and assess the fund and make recommendations. And the recommendations are made by the actuary and presented to the government. So it is very relevant to talk about what is happening around the world and what is happening in Grenada. The COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot talk about the COVID-19 pandemic in Grenada alone. Right? It is all over, and because it is all over, it will affect everybody. So speaking about what happened in another jurisdiction is critical.
All right, let me go back to the landline. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Blossom, and good morning to your guests. I want to say to the guests of the NI, you all must have a little more interact with your customers. For instance, if you have a doctor appointment, sometimes they call you and they remind you about your appointment. You have the registration of all your customers. And if you see 2 months, 3 months, no contribution had paid towards the contribution, call them, let them know, ask them. You have a job and notice 3 months, no contribution paid on your behalf. We just calling to find out if you have a job who you're working with, and then we workers too must have this kind of interact with all you too. You're working with a man, 1 month past 2 months, you call and find out if any contribution paid towards your benefit. Because a lot of people have been hurt working when they're thinking the contribution paying, nothing like that. They're reducing the money from the salary and they're not paying, and it's so sad. So if everybody do a little bit, show a little love, things might be better for everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Caller?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. One of the things that's important to highlight is that NIS would not know when you are not working because you're unemployed, or if it's a case where your employer is not paying. The other thing we started to do at one point is to print out contribution statements and send it out to employees. But shortly after, we had to abort that process because for most employees, they change their address, etc. They do not update it. So most of those statements were just coming back to us. Another thing is it would be difficult to call if we don't have the requisite contact information on the system for you. So what we encourage all employees to do, and I stress all employees, whether you're a permanent employee, temporary, part-time, you're making panqua, as we call it, you're daily paid, you're a trainee, we encourage you, contact us. The contribution statement is free and you get it immediately. So we would send it to you via email. Also remember, we have the live chat on our website. A lot of persons have a smartphone in their hand. So just as how you can WhatsApp, in fact, you could also WhatsApp us. So 458-6060, you request your contribution statement from the customer service person, or you can just go onto the live chat, state your email address, your NIS number, and request your contribution statement. And we send it to you immediately. You go through that contribution statement. If anything is missing, you contact us and we take it from there. So the employee only have a responsibility to check. Anything that comes after, we do the heavy lifting in terms of making sure our compliance department now take up that matter.
Facebook, there are a lot of questions and we're running out of time. Somebody on Facebook is asking what happens in cases where people paid all the necessary contribution and are entitled to full pension but died at age 60 or close to that age. Will the pension be paid to their next of kin or children?
Yes, two benefits are payable once an NIS contributor passes away. So once you're paying NIS, you have to remember to let your immediate family know they're entitled to benefits. So there's the funeral grant that is paid to the person who is taking care of your funeral expenses. In addition to that, we have the survivor's benefit that is paid to your spouse, and it includes a common law spouse, Once you've been living together with the person for at least 3 years or more, they can claim for a benefit. All your children, and a child is a child. So each parent or guardian, if the person had children with multiple individuals, can claim for their child or their children. We also have a dependent parent. Once there is enough, and a parent who are totally dependent on you for a living can also claim for a survivor's benefit. For the survivors to get a pension, that the deceased person must have paid NIS for at least about 3 years. And we also letting persons know. Sometimes persons think, well, if I'm employed, I can claim for a survivor's pension. That's not the case. You're getting the pension based on the fact that your spouse, whatever age the person is. So even if the person is under 60, whatever age the person dies, you can claim for a survivor's pension.
We are at the end of the program. I know Graphic Songs need to take over the reins at Hot 98. So Graphics, you can go ahead. Hot listeners, you can have a blessed rest of your Monday. And it's at this point that I would ask the officials any parting words as we end this morning.
Yes, so, in closing, we want to thank you for the opportunity to present today and have this discussion. It is something that we want to continue to do because we feel it is important to interact with our customers and our contributors and pensioners. And, we hear what people are saying and where we can make changes to the system to make the system better and work for persons, we will do that. On the issue of compliance, we understand it is a vexing issue for a lot of people, but be assured we are doing all within our powers to make sure, one, that persons contribute, and two, that everybody who has an opportunity to receive a pension gets that opportunity, because essentially that is what the NIS and all social security systems are set up to do. So I want to thank you again, and thanks to all of the listeners and viewers and for all of the many questions. Thank you.
Actually, somebody's asking, well, two people actually. Is there any way that somebody can check their contributions online?
Not now, but that will be included in the web portal that we discussed earlier. So very soon you'll be able to just go on the system and see your contribution status.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much for being our guest this morning. Appreciate it. I know there are a lot of other questions we haven't gotten to, but we would try to have the NIS back at a subsequent day, and we can get to some of your comments, questions, queries, concerns. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. And that's the...
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. That's the end of To The Point for today, Monday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Graphic Songs, I believe, has already taken over at Hot 98. Yes, he has. I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing. Be blessed, everybody.